What is going on, everybody? How's it going? James Jackson here. Hopefully, you guys are having a good afternoon. I know we had a bit of a hiccup earlier today. Sorry, I got the timings mixed up, but now we got everything set and ready to go. Uh, Today's a pretty good, exciting day. If you are a Blackmagic, if you're a fan of Blackmagic designs, there seems to be a update for the ATEM minis as well as a camera update. Now, a lot of people are assuming that they're going to be an announcement of a new camera. I'm not of the same belief, but I do think what they possibly may be announcing is something even bigger than a camera. And I'll get to it in my little previews before we get everything kicked off and announced. But let's just check chat real quick. Adrian, hey, what's up, man? How's it going? Praying for some good new cameras. Look, I will not be ashamed if they decide to put new cameras out. I just don't believe that that's what's going to be the case. Usually, when it comes to ATEM minis, when they announce something like with the ATEM minis, usually it's something more like a firmware update, and that's sort of where I'm sort of going with the camera update is sort of going to be. But if it does ends up being a new camera, especially if it looks really good, I'm not going to be disappointed. But as I mentioned, I think what they're planning to announce could be huge, could be very huge. That's even bigger than any camera that they could actually update. And I'll get to that in a moment. But yes, just let me know if you guys can hear me, if sound is good. I just want to make sure we're good on sound. So we got a little bit of time before the announcement party starts. Let me actually get this really quickly. I need to... But how's everybody doing today? Let me know if you all can hear me really well. Hopefully you guys can hear me. How's everybody doing this afternoon? So I'm gonna just give a couple more minutes before I sort of go into my pregame discussion of what I'm sort of expecting to be announced, and then after that, as we'll discuss a little more. Then we'll actually see what happens to see if my predictions are to be true. Mari, hey, what's up, man? Thanks for joining the channel, man. Happy to have you, man. So, but yeah, like I will say this, it's always interesting to me just how Blackmagic is able to keep so much under wraps. You know, given that recently the FX3 has been leaked, information has been leaked. I even got buddies of mine who have gotten videos from their sources and other people's, and they're learning more about the cameras. And yet, Blackmagic just drops cameras out of nowhere, and somehow nobody knows about it. Especially given how popular Blackmagic is in the filmmaking community, it's really something to be a marvel of, personally. So that's one of the things that is just continues to amaze me, just how much they are able to keep under wraps. Okay, sound is great. Thank you, Mari. Thank you for letting me know. But yeah, it really is like insane to me just how good they're able to just keep everything under wraps. So let me just go ahead and just get started with the pregame. For again, everybody here, thank you for joining me today. So today, of course, we are talking about this that is coming up, which is Blackmagic is, of course, doing a stream where they're doing an ATEM mini as well as a camera update. And as I was mentioning at the beginning was the fact that I know a lot of people right now are expecting Blackmagic's going to announce a new camera. And it very well may be, because when the last time Blackmagic had something that was like live broadcast and camera update, they announced the Ursa Mini 12K. So it very well may be possible that we will be getting a new camera. Just, so I don't know. Anytime they have done something with the ATEM minis, it's usually been more of some sort of firmware update or something that they were announcing related to the ATEM minis. But again, I could be wrong. But that is my impression. I don't think they are going to be announcing a new camera. However, what I do think they are announcing, if I am correct of what they're going to announce, and let me just put it right here, right now, I have no knowledge. I don't have anybody from Blackmagic who has reached out to me, or anybody that is even related to Blackmagic who's reached out or told me anything. So I don't. All of this, what I'm about to say, is pure speculation. But I would also love to hear what you guys are speculating what this may be about, because that's one of the great things I love, is just seeing what we all think could possibly happen. So I just want to let you guys know this is not based on any facts or any sort of insider knowledge that I may have. I don't have any of that. This is just purely of something that happened. There was a recent update in DaVinci and the beta test, and it's really sparked an interest. Hey Bernard, how's it going, man? Exciting day. Yes, it is. Exciting day. Thanks for joining, man. But let me just go into my theory real quick. Again, this is just pure speculation, but we have to go into DaVinci Resolve really quickly. I want you all to see something real quick. So recently, Blackmagic updated Resolve 17 beta, and as you guys can see here, we can clearly see we're in the raw tab. Nothing is very, very similar, but what they have recently done, specifically in the color space and the gamma, they have allowed you to update. They put in all the cameras that all the color sizes that they have, but as well as any cameras or camera systems that have been able to access Blackmagic RAW due to their video sys. So V-Gamut for, say, the EVA 1, you can access V-Gamut. You can access the Nikon color science for the Nikons. You got Canon as well. Same thing with the gammas. You got C-Log 2, you got V-Log, you got N-Log. So these were all recently added to the latest Resolve 17. Now, if you notice throughout this, there isn't anything related to Sony. And of course, Sony doesn't have anything related to Blackmagic RAW. They're pretty much only ProRes RAW. And obviously, you don't see Red RAW in terms of the color space or the gamma as well, because, you know, Red has their own RAW codecs, which, you know, again, this is all preferences, but for me personally, Red still has the best RAW workflow system. But I want you guys to notice something here. Do you guys notice a particular gamma and particular color science that is in the color space as well as the gamut? Do y'all notice this? Do y'all see it? Let me point it out directly to you. Alexa wide gamut. So the Arri Alexa color science, and they also put log C. Now, that's very interesting because, again, there's no Red color science or gamma. There's no Sony color science or color gamma. Other cameras that don't have Blackmagic RAW associated with them, they're not here. Arri is the only one that is not equivalent, has some sort of relationship to being supported through Blackmagic RAW. So, what my speculation is that this announcement is that Blackmagic is going to announce that Arri is now going to be supporting Blackmagic RAW. The Arri Alexa cameras are going to be supporting Blackmagic RAW. That is my suspicion on what they're going to announce. Now, if they announce the other camera, great. And if they, along with this, I think this will be even better. But I want you to understand how insane would it be. And if you're sort of thinking right now, right, that's it. They'll offer just a support for Blackmagic RAW and Arri. No. I don't think you understand how huge, monumentally, like almost industry-shakingly huge that would be, and how the momentum would be all in Blackmagic's favor if this was to be the case. Again, this is all speculative. But the reason why is because we all, if you're familiar at all in the industry or you're in the film industry at all, you know Arri is the dimple darling of Hollywood and in the film, from indie all the way up to the highest level of filmmaking. Arri has been top dog for centuries. For Arri it is true that Arri has partnered up with Blackmagic and is now going to be supporting Blackmagic Raw and Arri Alexa cameras. Blackmagic has made a huge chess move, if this is true, if this is to be the case. Because while other companies like Atomos and Apple have been gathering all these different cameras and getting all of them under the ecosystem, and everybody's sort of been really feeling, even though it's no, to me personally, Apple ProRes RAW is not on the near level of workflow or level of control that Blackmagic RAW provides. Certainly not at the level of Redco RAW. But a lot of cameras have been adopting it. If Arri was to adopt Blackmagic RAW, doesn't matter. I guarantee you, every single camera company will be calling up, emailing, phoning Blackmagic, trying to get their cameras into their Blackmagic RAW workflow. Because if you've been following me for a while, you know I've been saying, if Arri was to adopt any of these like compressed RAW codecs, whether it's ProRes RAW or Blackmagic RAW, every camera manufacturer would follow suit and go with that one. So it doesn't matter how many cameras Apple and Atomos have with ProRes RAW. If Blackmagic is able to get Arri to basically have their RAW codec as their one as their sort of compressed RAW option, all their efforts meaningless. All the other cameras that Sony's going to be dialing up Blackmagic. Canon's going to be dialing up Blackmagic for their C500s, their C300 Mark IIIs, maybe the C70. Panasonic is going to call them up to get their S1H and all their cameras up. Everybody will be phoning up Blackmagic, trying to get them to support Blackmagic RAW into their cameras, or get their cameras to support Blackmagic RAWs. End of story. And this little war, tit-for-tat war that Atomos and Blackmagic have been having for years of just basically combating each other, the war is over. If Arri does come out and support Blackmagic RAW, again, this is all speculative, I gotta remember this. If they actually do it, the war between Atomos and Blackmagic is over. Like, Atomos and Apple will have to, because there is no way in the world they're gonna wanna upset all of their Arri clients or people who use Arri cameras and not be able to support the RAW codec that is in those Arri cameras, or that those Arri cameras now support. So they will have to start stepping and trying to get Blackmagic RAW support in Final Cut in the Atomos recorders. Big chess move. Again, if this is the case. This is my suspicion, simply because, again, Arri is the only one in that RAW development tab that has not have Blackmagic RAW support that we know of. Every single one of them has a Blackmagic camera that is associated with Blackmagic RAW, or can use Blackmagic RAW. So, again, highly speculative, but this is my prediction of what is going to be announced. Let's go to the comments and see. Andreas, hey, what's up, man? How's it going? Thank you for joining, man. Let's see here. What we got here? I would love to see a box style camera, but sadly I expect an Ursa Mini full frame 8K. Yeah, I think, I don't know if they're going to announce a new camera, but if they do, I mean, that wouldn't surprise me. I do agree, and I talked to quite a few people who are Ursa Mini Pro owners. They want to see more of a box style camera as well. So hopefully that will change. We shall see. But again, I'm not sure if they're even going to announce a camera. That's a big claim here. Yeah, I know it's a big claim, but I'm just the things, the theories, and all the little things seem to be pointing to that's what maybe the direction they're going to be announcing. Bernard Words Jr., thanks, man, for joining the channel. Glad to have you here. I would definitely think they're joining the 8K party with Sony and Canon, possibly a Pocket 8K. If they do, I'll say this. If they do join the 8K party and they do put out a new camera, I really hope they don't make another camera with the body style of the Pocket Cinema camera. I wish there would be a little bit more, as Andres put out, a more box style camera. I hope, because I love my Pocket 6K, love it to death. I just don't know if I can, like, the body's just too weird. It's so hard to put on gimbals. I would like something that is a little bit more tightly compact, but we shall see. I don't believe in Blackmagic Raw and Arri. Okay, that's no problem. Again, it's a hunch. This is my guess because of just the update they just released on Resolve 17. And again, I'm probably going to be wrong. It's probably going to be a new camera, but to me that would be a far more bigger impact, a far bigger announcement than a new camera. Even a new camera, even if it's a full frame, new body, box style 8K camera, that announcement would, Arri supporting Blackmagic Raw will be a far bigger announcement than any camera that they could announce. But again, I could be wrong in all of this. We got about 13 minutes before the stream starts, but let's continue the chat. Why would Arri be a part of it? They already have their own raw format, even if it's a painter. Well, the reason why I say why would Arri be a part of it, it's because, as you point out, it is a paid, and also it's not compressed. Arri Raw, while Arri does have its own raw, it's not compressed, and it's a huge file to deal with. I'm pretty positive Arri would be interested in maybe doing some sort of compressed raw codec option, especially if it's a codec that meets up to their standards. And also, I'd like to point out, I've recently been doing like a passion project with a couple of friends of mine around here. And in the middle of the shoots, we got the discussion. And one of the things that was brought up is like, one of our guys, his name is Byron Shockley. I don't know if you guys know him around Philadelphia, but you know, he's getting big. He's doing a lot of great, amazing things. But one of the things he brought up, where he says when he's been on shoots, is that a lot of the cameras that he's seeing now as B cameras to Arri are the ATEM Mini, the Ursa Mini Pros. He's seeing a lot of Ursa Mini Pros being the main B cameras to Arri Alexas on shoots he's a part of. So it seems to, and it's not like we haven't even seen it on bigger Hollywood productions. If you actually watch the behind the scenes of The Mandalorian, you clearly can see Jon Favreau is doing some test shots or test footages with an Ursa Mini Pro. So clearly they are doing, so clearly these Ursa Minis have been getting a lot more into major Hollywood film productions, and we're seeing them a lot more. So I would not be surprised. I'm just saying, it's gotten to a point I would not be surprised if Arri and Blackmagic tried to make a collaboration partnership to sort of get together, especially if Arri can get a raw format that still keeps the image quality that Arri possesses, but in a more compressed version. Again, this is all still speculative. But if so, it would be great. I could agree. A Cold War with cameras, but yes, a Cold War with cameras. It's been especially with Blackmagic Raw and ProRes Raw. It's just been like a little Cold War between Atomos and Blackmagic. I don't have either side, but I will say I'm definitely biased towards Blackmagic Raw simply because I work in DaVinci Resolve and ProRes Raw doesn't work in DaVinci Resolve. So I would lean into Blackmagic Raw, but I wouldn't have. Right now, I'm not saying I would not use ProRes Raw. I just think, based on what I have had other people use and people that have shown me, the controls are just not as similar to Blackmagic Raw, and that's my only gripe with ProRes Raw. Outside of that, it's pretty much looks to be a great codec. All right. What do you expect on the ATEM side? New hardware or more features for the minis? Um, so Spartacus, and by the way, thank you for joining. And also, Spartacus, you are the MVP because otherwise you would have had me sitting here 2 hours ahead. Thank you for letting me know and giving me that update. I actually think there may be a new ATEM Mini they're going to announce, and I think if I had to guess, my guess is they're going to announce a new ATEM Mini, but this one is going to have BNC ports instead of HDMI, or they're going to be maybe a mix of BNC and HDMI. So then you can get support for Ursa Mini Pros to the ATEM Minis. That's sort of my prediction of what the ATEM Mini update is going to be. All right. Or they're going to enable all the global sensors they secretly put in their cameras for years. Okay, I'm joking. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows, man? Blackmagic and Arri Color Science are really close, to be honest. Yeah, I would say Blackmagic and Canon are probably of all the cameras that I have tested, have been the closest to really easily replicating the Arri Color Science, which is also why it was so easy for me to match. Though their tint shifts are a little bit like Canon tends to really oversaturate their reds a little bit more, whereas Blackmagic tends to have their skin tones go a little bit more towards the yellow. But you can easily correct them and sort of get them to match because their color science is not that far off. They're both very neutral cameras. So yeah, but I would definitely say Blackmagic is closer to the Arri look than Canon. All right, Arri, hope you're right. I mean, I would like to be right. If I'm wrong, I won't feel bad. Especially if there is a new camera, I definitely won't be. I won't feel bad at that at all. But man, if I am right, God, that will be like like seriously, I think that would be earth shattering, like industry shakeup. Personally, Blackmagic Raw is so smooth to edit. They're really amazing codec. It's a really amazing codec. Yep, totally agree. Yeah, especially like it's so amazing how much you can just like smoothly get things done. But again, it's sort of that integration where Blackmagic knows this codec, they built it, they have also the NLE. So the fact that they can build the codec, the NLE, and the cameras all together, everything could just run smoothly. Bernard Wirchner, I'm with you. I like B-roll. Excellent. So we got about 7 minutes before the update, before everything goes live. I will say this, and actually let me minimize this and let me pull this up so we can make sure we're not missing anything. And I will. All right, so we're gonna have that. We have that standby. But yeah, I'm excited, man. I cannot wait to see what they're going to be announcing. Speaking of Blackmagic, I have, like I said, I've been doing a passion project with a couple friends of mine, which also gave us time to test out different things with the Ursa Mini Pros, which my man Juan Ortiz owns a few of them. But I also got a chance to do some side-by-side comparisons of the Ursa Mini Pro. This is the G1, not the G2, with the Canon C70. And so I'm definitely going to be putting out that footage soon, sort of once I sort of get that video done. But I'm also going to release the footage so you guys can see and sort of play with it yourselves once I've got that video out. So be on the lookout for a C70 Ursa Mini part 1. I'm going to definitely do a part 1 because there's some things I also want to go more deep dive into, and I'll just leave it at that. I want to dive a little bit more into both of these cameras to make sure I can give you the most valid amount of information that I can. So if that makes sense. The Awakened Soul. Hey, long time no see, man. Hopefully, how you doing, man? Hopefully you're doing well. Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 8K, you think? I mean, it's possible, but as I mentioned before, I really hope they change the body because I still am not a fan of the body of the Pocket Cinema cameras. I love the cameras, and for what they are price-wise, there's hardly any camera that can compete with those cameras. But I really do wish that the body would change. It's a little bit more compact so you can put it on gimbals. It's one of the reasons why I love the C70 why even the C200, the body was still compacted. I can put it on a bigger size gimbal, like you could put it on a Ronin S or even like a Ronin S, definitely a Ronin S2. You can put it on a Crane 3S, and you can get shots with that. So for me, I would love to see a little bit more gimbal friendly pocket cinema camera, especially something that can go toe to toe with people uh, looking at things like the Ursa, the Komodos, the C70. Give people some different options, and even the Z cams. I hope it's not an 8K pocket. We definitely don't need more resolution. Um, okay. I definitely agree that look, you don't need 8K, but I also think a lot of people are definitely undervaluing the potential of what 8K can provide for you right now. There are so many different opportunities that could generate you a good amount of money if you have an 8K camera. What if it's stock footage? What if it's visual effect, doing something for visual effects? There is a place for 8K in this time period. So I don't think people, it's like people that are saying, we don't need 8K. Technology is always going to be pushing forward. And it's like, I'm always a person of a belief that you either embrace the pushing forward of technology, or you're going to just let technology overtake you. And while I definitely don't think 8K is a necessity right now, I do believe that people should definitely at least look into 8K or higher resolutions, just purely at the options of what you can do, and even of things that you places you can deliver 8K content to, and give yourself a little bit of extra cash when maybe things are slow. So I always say don't turn down opportunity just because it's something new and it's bigger and better. That's all I gotta say about that. We got 3 minutes before we kick off. Morani, Blackmagic could take the smaller screen from the Ursa Mini Pro line and change that form factor while minimizing the R&D costs. Yeah, I see. I think the reason why the Ursa Minis are so big is mainly because of the fans that are in them. I think that's the main reason why they're so big. But I agree. Maybe hopefully they can come up with a new technology with newer fans, and that can be a little bit smaller. Um, we'll see, but it would definitely be nice to have something different with that. Andres, I'm a big fan of 6K and 8K delivery. Uh, Look, I'm agree. Well, I definitely am a big fan of 4K delivery, and honestly, just the wiggle room that you have to do when you can shoot with 6K or 8K or these higher resolutions, and just being able to give yourself some options in post is a great thing to have, and especially if you could do something like 8K raw, where you get, especially if it's 12-bit, and you can give yourself a lot more color depth and more pixel information to really, like, you can do some insane amount of color gradings with 8K raw. Will you be testing the Alpha 1? Honestly, I don't know. um I've like if I come across a friend who has it, and we'll do and we'll collaborate on it, probably. But honestly, like, to me, it's not the 8K is really doesn't come off as impressive to me in that camera as of right now from what I'm seeing. Again, it's not released yet, but I don't the 8K does not impress me, especially since it's 420, not even 422 10-bit. There's no 8K raw with that as well. So I don't know, because I honestly, outside of that, it's the A7S, and I would rather look at something like the A7S than the A1, especially in terms of video. Now for stills, I'll leave that to my buddy Gaston Shutters. I know he's going to be getting his hands on it and testing it if he hasn't gotten it on right now. But we're 30 seconds away from the announcement, so I'm going to get ready to mute myself, and then we'll just all sit back and watch it together. So once the announcement is over, we'll come back and we'll start chatting together. So enjoy.
Hi, I'm Grant from Blackmagic Design. We've got some really exciting products to show you today. We have a whole new camera, so there's going to be some really interesting things to talk about. But first, I'd like to start with ATEM Mini. You know, the ATEM Mini customers are doing some really amazing work, actually some very creative work. You know, ATEM Mini just has so many different uses, and it's because it's so powerful. But it's often used on location, and the internet connectivity is really tough when you're mobile because you've got to find someone to plug the Ethernet into, and that's often not possible. So we've been really working hard on this problem, and what we've got is a new software update that lets you tether your mobile phone to the ATEM Mini. Now it supports all the ATEM Mini Pro models, and that's because they're the ones that actually do the live streaming. It supports both Android and Apple phones. You pretty much just plug the phone into the USB connection on the ATEM Mini and it works. The ATEM Mini Pro will automatically recognize the phone when it's plugged in. There's no settings, you just plug in the phone and it works. So let me show you how this works. Now the ATEM Mini Pro here is set up to live stream to YouTube. And on the rear monitor, I've got the web browser with the YouTube display in it, so it's live streaming through. Now, the ATEM Mini Pro here is connected to the internet via its Ethernet connection. One thing that's really important also to know about before we do this is you have to activate the tethering on your phone to actually make this work. So I've got a phone here. It's got the tethering enabled, which is the phone here, and I've got a USB cable, so I'll plug the phone in. There it is there. And I'll plug in the other end into the USB port on the back of the ATEM Mini. So what will happen is, I'm not sure you can get an overhead shot of that, but there it is, the little tethering icons come up. It's a bit different. I've got an older phone, so this phone's a newer one, so it's got a slightly different indicator. Now, the ATEM Mini can see the phone, and if you look on the multi-view, you can see there's a little phone icons appeared on the streaming status view. So what we do now is we'll unplug the Ethernet and see how it switches across. So if I unplug the Ethernet, you'll see the icon on the multi-view is actually grey. So I've unplugged the Ethernet here, and what you'll see is it'll switch across. Now, you can see the icon's gone red and it's flashed the on-air indicator, and that shows that it's now switched over and it's live streaming. And you see there's a little bit of an interruption to the live stream, but it's done a clean switch over, and now it's running with the phone data and not the Ethernet, because the Ethernet's not even plugged in. So let's switch back. So we'll plug the Ethernet back in, and we'll unplug the phone, and you'll see that I'll straighten myself up here a little bit. So the overhead camera looks great. And you'll see now it'll switch back. The phone icon's disappeared from the streaming status indicator, and it's gone back and it's switched across, and now we're streaming back on the Ethernet. It also does something that computers don't do very well, and you just saw it. Basically, that's changing between mobile data and Ethernet. The ATEM Mini Pro will keep streaming when the network changes. You can switch it backwards and forwards. So if you have an Ethernet problem, you can plug your phone in. But a lot of times, software applications actually need to be quit and relaunched, because they'll actually connect through one of the services and they don't really switch across. But ATEM Mini doesn't need to do that. It'll just switch live, even while you're streaming, and you just saw how it did that. Because we've got full control. It runs Blackmagic OS, so we've got full control over the whole process of how we connect. And another thing I think it's really also important to think about with this phone tethering stuff is the mobile data speed. Phones can vary a lot in data rate. I mean, every internet connection can do that. Also, the data rate will go up with frame rate. So there's a lot of things to consider. Also, 5G phones are faster than 4G phones. So if there's not enough speed to do the live stream through your phone, there are some options. You can switch to a lower quality. You can also switch to a lower frame rate. And so lower frame rates are okay, of course, because all the inputs will just convert. So even if you're running 1080p 60 and you wanted to, say, stream at 24p because the data rate is too much at 60p, you can switch the switcher over to 24p. All the inputs will just convert and it'll all just work. So it's really good. So I think this mobile data will be really helpful to people. It's actually in a new software update. It's called ATEM Update 8.6, and it'll be available on our website today. We'll post that. It supports mobile data on ATEM Mini Pro and the ATEM Mini Pro ISO models, because they're the ones that are got the streaming built in. And also it'll be available free of charge, so you'll just be able to download the update and add that feature. Okay, so now I wanted to discuss the ATEM Mini family as a whole. The ATEM Mini's been really well received. It's got a lot of professional features, and these are not dumbed down switches, but they're true professional switches, for important work, even though they are HDMI. People have used the switches in a lot of ways we never expected, which has been quite a lot of fun to see. I mean, some remarkable ways. It's quite shocking. So we thought, really, how far could we push this design? We wanted to try and, we were sort of thinking, could we build a really much more powerful model? But how far could we take it? Like, really, how far could we push this? Could we build a high-end switcher, but kind of in an ATEM Mini design? And we weren't really sure if it was possible. We've been working on this for a while, but it was a challenge we kind of set ourselves. There's a bunch of challenges. Could we make it affordable enough? Could we keep the advanced electronics cool without fan noise, which is really important because often these switches are used in the same environment with the cameras, so you don't want the fan noise being picked up. Was it even really possible to fit a big switcher into an ATEM Mini design? So, well, not fit exactly. It has grown a little bit in size, but we've been able to do it. We've pulled it off, and the new model is called ATEM Mini Extreme. It's dramatically more powerful. I'll bring one out and show you. I've got one here, so here it is. It's quite big, as you can see. It's a much bigger switcher. You can see the size difference there. I'll try and straighten it up a bit. So you can see it's got a much bigger control panel, a lot more controls. It's a monster, this thing. So if you're looking for a more powerful ATEM Mini, then this is it. We've really gone for it. So actually, I'll start by showing you the back. Let me let's put that aside. I'll move the phone out of the way. Let's have a look at the rear view. I don't know if you can get a close-up of that there. So there are a lot more connections on the back. So you can see that it's got the 12-volt DC input. Now it includes a bigger power supply because it's obviously uses more power. There's gigabit Ethernet built in. We're going to be able to use it for a few things in the future as well. So it's got tons of fast Ethernet. It's got the streaming built in, so it's a bit like the ATEM Mini Pro models, a bigger version of ATEM Mini Pros in some ways. So you don't need any external streaming software because that's built in. It supports YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, Vimeo, and more, just like the ATEM Mini Pro models do. But it now has 2 USB connections. So this is important if you want to, maybe you want to use a webcam while you're recording to a USB disk at the same time. Or say if you want to do recording while you're live streaming via the phone, because it supports the phone tethering as well as the ATEM Mini Pro now does. Of course, you can still connect a USB hub, so if you want more devices, but I think it's really nice having 2 USB connections built in. It's much simpler. Now it's a HD switcher, so all the HDMI connections support up to 1080p 60, and it has 2 independent HDMI outputs. Now these work like aux outputs, so you can route different video sources to them. And this model has 8 inputs as well. Obviously, it's twice the number of inputs. So more inputs means you can use more cameras, and that's really nice if you're using if you can't afford camera operators and you want to just use more camera angles, so you can just add more cameras. Now each input has a separate standards converter, so you could have 8 different video standards plugged in. You just plug everything in and it works. The microphones are the same microphones work. There's now an additional headphone output, and the headphones are proper monitoring output, so it's on a separate audio monitoring bus. So let's check out the front again. In fact, what we'll do is we'll plug it in, which is a bit of an ordeal with so many connections. Now I've got 8 hyperdecks that we're using as sources here. So let me just plug in. I'll actually sit it on top and start plugging away. Let's plug in some power, and I'll plug in the network, and I'll plug my video output, and I'll go through the inputs because there's quite a lot of inputs here. So sorry, it takes a moment because there's so much to plug in. It's the problem with the bigger switcher that's got so many connections. I'll get rid of my ATEM Mini Pro, move it out of the way. Actually, I'll position it so you can see on the overhead camera because we've got a camera overhead here. Now I've got a whole bunch of extra inputs because of the number of sources. I've got an extra output which will plug in because it's got the 2 video outs. And I've got 4 more inputs. So I've got quite a lot of cables. And so these are all hyperdecks playing back these different camera angles of a cooking show. But camera 1 is actually a pocket camera just over there. So there we go. So we've got everything plugged in. Looks good. And we've got all nice and straight, so that overhead camera looks pretty good. So one of the first things you can see now, I've plugged in the multi-view. I've plugged, both video outputs and all inputs. You can see the multi-view is a little different, so I'll get into that in a moment. But let's have a look around the front panel and see what's on there. So we've got it now running with all 8 inputs connected, so I can just switch between all those sources. So you see there it is. And also there's the smaller source buttons over here, so you've got 2 media players and a few more things there. You can still change between cut and auto, so you can still do the transitions, just like you can with the ATEM Mini. Of course, auto is the sort of industry standard way of selecting a transition versus a cut. Any ATEM customer would already know that. Now it's got the same transition duration buttons, so it's 1/2 second to 2 seconds, and they're located just over here, so you can change the durations of the transitions. And they've also got a fade to black control here, so it still has that. So it looks very similar to an ATEM Mini. Now the transition selection is located above the auto button over here, and we've got more of those. So you can set to different things. So like for example, at the moment it's set to mix. So when you do a transition, it'll be a mix. But you can also do other transitions like dip, for example. There it is. And you've got like 6 wipes on there. There's more buttons for different transitions. So you've got 6 wipes, and including horizontal, vertical, diagonal, circle, and square wipes. There's also DVE transitions. So if you can select some of those DVE transitions and do those, so you can see that they are there. And the DVE transitions on the buttons directly include push right, squeeze right, push down, squeeze down, and I'll switch back to mix, and in fact I'll switch back to cut. So you can see that you've got a few more transitions over there. There's also upgraded video output controls because we've got more sources now. So the HDMI video outputs are actually like aux outputs, so you can route video to them. So output HDMI 1 has settings on the control panel here, and so you can see the location of where they are there. Now you can route sources out using the ATEM software control, where you get access to both video outs and you can use them both like auxes, but you can view it on the front panel here. So let's have a quick look. So, I'm looking at, in fact, if I can switch the video across, I can see this. So that's the second video output I've got on the back there. So I can now switch the sources between the camera inputs to that video output live. And you notice that it's basically a clean feed of the video sources, and it's very, the switching's very clean. Now you can connect this to a video projector, and one of those inputs could be a slideshow, and you can switch to the video projector from the front here. So it's almost like doing a separate live switch. And also Video Hub control panels work. So that's nice. They've also got a multi-view output, but we'll set it back to program because we're actually using a 2-monitor display. So you can see you've got a lot of really nice controls there. Now it's got the same streaming controls on the top right of the panel there, the same on and off air controls there. You've also got the same record and stop controls. There's also some extra key controls, which we've got over here. You have the key 1 and downstream key controls on there now, and it's nice to have a downstream key button. So if you're using a logo in the downstream key, you've got that. Now again, all the keys are all available in the ATEM software control, so that's nice. Now the other thing we've got on the front panel is a bunch of macro buttons. All ATEM Mini models have macros, but the ATEM Mini Extreme has 6 macro buttons on the front panel that you can fire them by pushing one of those buttons, and there they are there. It makes them much more accessible. You can set up really complex effects and just trigger them just on one of those buttons there. I can just get a close-up of that. Now the DVEs, the ATEM Mini Extreme has 2 DVEs. So you can do like a 2-up views for interviewing people. There's front panel buttons with some presets for you. So you can select some of the DVE buttons, and I've got, I can select the DVE on there. You can see that's the 2-up. I've got the different views there. I can select a few of the different ones. See there on the bottom there's the 2-up view, and you can see I've got 2 there. So that's pretty nice. And you also, again, get full control of the DVEs from the ATEM software control. But these preset buttons make working with DVEs really fast. So I'll leave that. I think that's off here. That's off. Now the other thing we've got is a select bus. Powerful switches have what they call a select bus on the control panel. Now what it does, it allows you to control the sources into internal processing such as DVEs. So let me show you how this works. So say, for example, something like the dip transition, which I'll select over there. Now we were using a color generator. When we did this before, there's a source for that dip, and we were using a color generator. That was why it was white. So when we did a dip, it went to, whoops, I've got to select order. So when I do a transition, you can see it was white because it was using a color generator, and that color generator is white. But what it allows us to do is we can change the source that we're going to use for that. Now the sources are along the top here, so you can see that, and the destinations are along the bottom. So, and the destinations include inputs to keyers, DVEs, the DVE video sources, the dip source, and a lot more. So the dip is along the bottom here. So let's have a look. There it is there. So that's the dip source. So we select that on the bottom row, and then you can see that it's showing the color generator on the top row. And I think we probably picked that up on the top camera, as you can see that. So we could change it to something else. So for example, if we change it to bars, now when I do a transition, whoops, I changed it to black. There's bars. So there you go. So now I changed the dip source to bars. So you can really see how fast it is to change sources on the front panel itself. So let's change something else. Let's change one of the DVEs. So I'll turn the 2-up view back on. So let's turn the DVE back on. So you can see I've got the 2-up view with the DVEs. And now you can see I've got those 2 DVEs. So let's change the inputs to those DVEs. So the DVE sources are actually over here. Whoops, there they are. DVE 1. So now what's really interesting is I've selected DVE 1 on the lower row, and you can notice that the top row is now showing that that's the input, one of the camera inputs is going to that DVE. Now what's really interesting is that they went red. What this means is the DVE is on air, and it's a warning to show you that anything you change here will be seen by the viewers. So if I turn the DVE on and off, then you can see the color changes back to white. So you can see it's like a tally on the select bus and let you know that if you change anything, people are going to notice it. So I think that's really nice to have that. So let's select color bars. So you can see I've got some color bars. I can select some different cameras. The camera numbers are over here, so I can go through different camera sources and select those into the DVE. So you can see I've got, when I change the input, the DVE input changes. So the select bus makes this stuff much faster because you can really route all the sources. It's the same workflows you see on really big switches, but now we have it here right on the front panel. It's really fast and it's really simple to use. So I'll just turn my DVEs back off again. Now the other thing we've got in ATEM Mini Extreme is camera control right on the front panel. The buttons are located just above the inputs, so it allows really quick camera adjustments. So if I cut to camera 1, we have a Pocket Cinema Camera 6K connected to input number 1. So I can cut to input number 1, which is just here. Now this camera has studio features including lens control, tally and a color corrector. So we can control that from the switcher. So if I go between camera 1, if you can get a close up of the screen on the back, you can see as I'm switching to the camera and back again, I've got the tally light coming on and off on the LCD on the back. Now iris is the default control. So you'll notice here we've got up and down arrows. So if I start adjusting those, you can see I'm now adjusting the iris. And that's the most common control you need, which is iris. Because if you're using outside, you're doing outdoor shooting, the lighting conditions can change. So you can track those lighting conditions. So you can see there I'm changing the iris. But there's also other camera settings you can control as well. So you just need to select the override buttons. And those 4 buttons above here, if you can see that, you can see them on the overhead camera. There's all the arrows here for the iris. But these 4 buttons will override those up and down buttons. And you can say, for example, we can press gain or, well, that's black, and then we can adjust that setting. Oops, there it is there. You've got to be fairly quick. So now there's buttons for overriding the levels for shutter speed, black, level, and focus. The focus one's actually quite interesting because if you, I'll show you basically how this works. If we just focus and really make the camera go out of focus. There it is there. So I've adjusted that camera way out of focus. Now what you can do is you can press and hold the focus button to trigger the autofocus in the camera. So if I just press and hold that button, you'll see now it'll trigger the autofocus in the camera. So it's a really great way of really fast using the camera's features itself to do the focus. Now the camera control is really simple, but it's surprisingly powerful. You have full camera control obviously in the ATEM software control, but it's quite useful to have all this on the front panel. And of course you can also use one of the ATEM camera control panels, if you really want to go for it. Now the audio controls is another set of features on the front panel. They're very similar to the other ATEM Mini models. They're located above the inputs along here. With more inputs, we still have the full audio processing on all the inputs. So each input has audio processing it has a compressor, 6-band parametric EQ, limiter, expander, and more. That's on all the inputs. And there's also now, what's been added is headphone controls for the headphone output, and they've been added on the panel here. So you've got level up and down, you can set the levels up and down. You've also got a mute and a reset as well, so that's nice for headphone control right from there. Now, even though that's the front panel, we haven't really described what's inside yet. Up until now, we've really only talked about the front panel controls, but the really big increase in power in this switcher is the internally. So what I'll do is I'll change over to the ATEM Mini software control and we can check this out. So, well, the first thing we can actually talk about is the new multi-view. So what I need to do is I'll plug in using USB into the software because we haven't got a connection up here. So let's plug in my USB and we'll plug in into one of the 2 USB ports that we've got on the back. So now we should have the ATEM software control come up. There it is. And so you can see the multi-view is a little different to the ATEM Mini Pro. I don't know if we can cut to that. We've actually taken the multi-view from the ATEM Constellation 8K. It's our best multi-view by far. It's an incredible multi-view, so this is why we wanted to really bring that across. So we've taken it from our top switcher. It still includes the audio meters on all the views. It still includes custom labels on the views, which the other ATEM Minis can do. The ATEM Mini Pros, sorry, the ATEM Mini Pros are the ones that have the multi-view. But now you can also select the number of views. It supports up to 16 views in total. So let me show you how this works. So over in the ATEM software control, all we have to do is go to the settings and select multi-view. And you can see here's our multi-view settings over here. So if I want to change to 16 views, for example, I just have to click on this little icon here and it'll now change to 16 views. So I can also change sources. So for example, I could change, well actually that's already on the audio status. So, or I could change it to, anything I really like, one of the color generators. Well, I've already got a color generator. number 1 there. I could do it on color generator 2. So you can see it's quite nice, and I'll switch it back to my program view, which I have there. Now 16 views is really great with those 2 HDMI video outputs because you can use a 2 monitor setup, which is what we actually are showing you behind. I'll go back to a nice shot. So one monitor has the 16 sources on the multi-view, and the other one has the program view. So that's a really nice combination to have because you can use those 2 outputs to really give you that big program view, and then you've got tons of views on the multi-view. Now the ATEM Mini Pro also has a media player with 20 still frames. With the latest software update that we did on the ATEM Mini Pros, they even retain those still frames between a power cycle. But with the ATEM Mini Extreme, you now get 2 media players. So let's take a look at that. So if we switch to the media play page, I'll get rid of this there. And if I go to the media page, you can see I've got the 2 media players, and we can load a still into media player number 1. So I've just loaded a still into there, and I can load another graphic into media player number 2. In fact, the default media players have already set up to use slots 1 and 2. So now you have 2 video sources into the switcher, and you can see them on the multi-view. In fact, the multi-view by default shows the 2 media players there. Now, previously we showed you using DV preset buttons to turn on the 2 multi-views. We've got, DVEs. We've got 2 DVEs in the switcher. This is great for interviewing multiple people. You can show like 2 different interviewers at the same time, so that's really nice. So let me show you the DVEs in the switcher. So if I go across to the palettes, I can see I've got my upstream keyers, and there's the DVE. And you can see I can turn on that keyer. So there it is there. And I can move the DVEs around. This is where you do the adjustments. Whoops, I've got to click it there. And you can see you can position those all over the place, and it's really change the size. And so 2 DVEs are really nice. So I'll turn off that key. So there's 2 key DVEs built in, and that's just really flexible. But with so many inputs, we also thought we could do a lot more. More inputs actually allow us to do some pretty exciting things. So we've actually included SuperSource in the ATEM Mini Extreme. Now what SuperSource is, if you don't know, because you haven't used some of our bigger switches, SuperSource is 4 DVEs in a multi-layer compositing engine. So what this means is you actually get 4 video sources as separate DVEs in a layer stack. So you basically get a 4 DVE kind of layering engine, plus you've got the 2 DVEs that are actually built in there. So that's 6 DVEs in total in the switcher. There's also, the SuperSource has support for a background graphic as well as a foreground graphic. Now a background graphic goes behind all those DVEs, whereas a foreground graphic goes over the front of the DVEs. And that's actually really very powerful because it allows you to create like really nice graphics with borders and things. Because it goes in front of the DVEs, then it really creates nice borders on those DVEs. So it's really nice. And so SuperSource is fantastic for interviews where each interviewer has a separate picture-in-picture. It's great for gaming competitions. You could have 4 cameras and 4 consoles all connected at once because you've got enough inputs, and you could have combinations of gamers and their consoles or overlaid on top. It's really nice. So let's have a quick look, and we'll show you how this works. So what we do is we'll start by selecting SuperSource on the front panel. We have a dedicated button on the front panel for SuperSource. There it is there. And now it's basically by default it's a 4-box setup, as you can see there. Now this is the SuperSource. It's not even the normal DVEs, but you can also change it in the ATEM software control. So what you do is you go into the SuperSource palette, which there it is there. And you can see I've got a bunch of different interesting combinations you can select. And you can show the arrangement positions, and you can set all the inputs to the SuperSource DVEs. So you can see there, you can change the different boxes and then do the controls and change the inputs and all the settings and where they are. And you can also load in a graphic. So for example, if I go to the media player and load in a foreground graphic, I can now change that into media player 2, and I can go back to SuperSource and I select art. Now what I need to do is I need to select media player 2 as my graphic source, but it's made that graphic the background. I actually want the graphic to be the foreground, so let's do that because it's got borders on it, and the borders actually now become the DVE borders. So you can see there it's all lined up and it looks really nice. Now, you can spend a lot of time getting all this perfect. We've actually got the graphic. This graphic just supports the default SuperSource layout. But really the trick here is to line up all the DVEs so they match the graphic. And we made this graphic to suit the default SuperSource layout, so we didn't have to spend time doing it here. But you can really see how powerful that is. Now SuperSource is really separate to those 2 main DVEs. So that means they're still available if you need to use them for something else. Although I'm not sure how much stuff you can really put on the screen at one time. Now the other thing we've done with ATEM Mini Extreme is we have 8 inputs. So we can do a lot more with the keyers. So what 8 inputs mean is that ATEM Mini Extreme is big enough to actually do virtual sets. So we now have 4 ATEM Advanced chroma keys in this switcher, which means you can do 4 separate chroma keys at the same time. They're all completely independent. So that's basically means you could have 4 separate cameras that could have a dedicated chroma key each. So you can use basically the 8 inputs to do virtual set, to create virtual sets, 4 live cameras over 4 live backgrounds. So 4 of the inputs we'd use for the cameras and then key them, and 4 inputs would be used for the live rendered backgrounds that are coming in from the virtual set processing. Now, a lot of virtual sets actually use our decklink cards. We even have a quad HDMI model. So, I reckon third-party developers could even create some really interesting virtual set rendering machines. But you could also use macros and the media players to do fixed camera virtual sets. So let me show you the keyer palettes in the ATEM software control. So if I go across, I'll close the SuperSource one. Well, actually, we kind of showed you this before because we used it for DVs, but there they are there. See, they're 4 independent keyers. Now, what that means is you can control these with macros and you can switch the media players into the keyers. So what that means is you could create a fixed camera virtual set all in the ATEM Mini Extreme without any extra hardware. So each camera would have a pre-rendered background. So you could basically put that behind the camera. So you can key the camera over a green screen and then put that background in the back. And if you don't move the camera, you don't really need a live motion virtual set. You can just render out some still frames from a 3D model of a set and put them behind each camera, and then use the macros to switch the media players into the keyers. So it's incredibly powerful having 4 independent chroma keys. I think it's going to make the whole virtual set thing possible. I mean, that's a whole new world that we could really pretty much open up. So it's really quite exciting. Now, of course, the big question then, what about bigger work? What happens if you want to take it even further? What happens if you want to build a bigger studio? So the ATEM Mini Extreme is really the perfect match for the ATEM 1ME Advanced panel. In many ways, that became our yardstick of how big this switcher should be. Let's just make it perfect for an ATEM 1ME Advanced panel. It's a totally professional setup. It unlocks a lot of the power in the switcher. There's dedicated buttons. I've got a few slides here that you can see. It's got dedicated buttons for all the switcher functions. The design is a very traditional broadcast switcher, so it's great for training and education. So using that ATEM 1ME Advanced panel is a really good way to use the switcher. The ATEM Mini ME Advanced panels behind me are connected to the ATEM Mini Extreme here. And so we're running the whole panel from there. Now it shows, the great thing is you can see, and I'll bring up some slides here, you can see that all the buttons have input labels, so you can have custom source names. Now there's 10 buttons on these panels, so that supports the 8 inputs of the ATEM Mini Extreme and plus the 2 media players all along that row. And there's a shift button, so you can switch to another 10 sources. You can also see there's a nice big T-bar fader handle. It's got direct access to the downstream keyers on the right-hand side there. You can see there's a select bus, which has got all the labels on it. So again, if you custom label the inputs, it's not just numbers, they're actually the custom labels. And that select bus will switch to macro control. So there's a macro button. And when you switch over, then all your macros, you can see them by name. So if you're using, if you've done a bunch of custom macros and you've labeled them by name, then you can actually see the actual proper names on the panel because you've got an LCD for the labels. Now it's got a really large system control LCD, gives you really fast access to all the settings. You get a joystick for moving those DVEs around for both the SuperSource and the normal DVEs. So I think the ATEM Mini Extreme is a really perfect size for this panel, and it adds a completely professional workflow when you plug it in. So really this switcher can go much further if you now fill it out with some of the control panels. And you wouldn't even know it's an ATEM Mini model switcher when you're using it, if you didn't know. Also, we have the ATEM camera control panel. It's got dedicated control for all the cameras. That's also perfectly matched for this. It's got 4 controllers, but you can change the controllers really quickly. So you can do more than 4 cameras, and in this case, we'd want to use 8. It's got a really nice big knob on the front, and that's the iris control, which is the default control. It's so nice to use. If you rotate the control, it actually sets the black level. And if you push the control, it actually selects the camera to the video output. And that's something that's used by camera operators when you can use one of the, because they're proper aux outputs, you can use one of the outputs to give the camera operator a view of his cameras. So you can be using one of the camera video outputs for multi-view, while your camera operator is actually pushing the knobs and switching that second output so he can see what he's doing, and so he gets a chance to match the cameras by really quickly switching between them. There's also RGB knobs for tint, and that uses the color corrector in the camera. The pocket cameras, for example, have the color correctors built into them, and you can use the tint controls. There's lots of other controls as well. So you can really see how powerful ATEM Mini Extreme can be when you realize that once you use it with those panels, really how nice it is. It goes all the way to the most professional workflow you can get. So really, let's summarize what we have here. We've got 8 inputs. Each input has standards conversion. You just plug anything in and it works. The audio mixer supports processing on all those inputs, which means every HDMI input has a separate limiter, noise gate, compressor, and EQ. There's 4 upstream ATEM advanced chroma keys. They're the good keys, the most advanced keys we have in ATEM switches. There's 2 downstream keys for titles. There's 2 media players for graphics and titles. There's 2 independent DVEs for picture-in-picture effects. There's a super source with another 4 additional DVEs and a multi-layer processor. There's a select bus on the front panel. The multi-view supports up to 16 different views. Both HDMI outputs have source routing, so they work as aux outputs. There's a separate headphone connection with audio monitoring bus, so you've got separate audio monitoring control of that. You know, it's really basically like a 1ME HD version of our Constellation switcher. It's basically the best 1ME switcher we have. It's way more powerful than actually our 1ME SDI models. So it's really exciting. It's an insane switcher. So it's very exciting. Now the ATEM Mini Extreme will be available now for $995. I reckon it's going to be really exciting to see how people use it. Yeah, who knows what kind of new workflows are going to be possible, particularly say things like the virtual sets and things like that. So it's really exciting. Now that's not all we've done. We have an ISO model of our ATEM Mini Pro. So we thought it'd be really nice to have an ISO model of the ATEM Mini Extreme. And we do have that. It's called ATEM Mini Extreme ISO, and it records all 8 inputs and the program video. Now this model features a massive record engine. It basically records 9 streams in total. It saves the DaVinci Resolve project, so you can record and open up your whole live production as an edit. It means you can fix bad edits, replace shots, and add color correction later. You can even trigger the record in the Blackmagic Pocket cameras, because those Pocket cameras support Blackmagic RAW files, so you can link them to the edit. And that's how you can actually do an Ultra HD film workflow in a HD switcher. So it's a great combination. The combination of Blackmagic RAW and color correction makes film-looking shows. So obviously we wanted to have an ATEM Mini Extreme that can do that. That's why we felt it was really very important for us to have an ISO model of the ATEM Mini Extreme. It's really quite amazing. Let me bring one out and we can have a look. Here it is here. You can see it's kind of quite simple. It's very similar. It's the same. Actually, I'll put it above it so you can see both models compared there. Let me line that up. So you can see it's basically it looks the same as the ATEM Mini Extreme, except this is ATEM Mini Extreme ISO. So we'll plug it in, we'll transfer the connections across to this guy here. I'll put it on top because I think that might be the easiest way to transfer the connections. A little bit undignified for the switcher that's below it, but let's change the connections across. So input 3, input 4, input 5, there's so many inputs. Input 6, input 7, input 8, video output number 2. The connections on the back are exactly the same. I'll move our USB up and I'll change our Ethernet. Plug that, and my switch has really gone offline now. And then we'll plug in ATEM Mini Extreme, and I'll take that ATEM Mini Extreme out of the way. And let's line it up so we can get that overhead camera looking good. There it is there. So you can see it's all lit up and it looks very similar to the, set some of my audio there. So you can see it, basically it's the same as the ATEM Mini Extreme, except it's the ISO model. So it's got similar multi-view, everything's there. It's got some different setups in it because it's a different switcher. So now what I'll do is I'll plug in a flash disk, which I've got here. I've got 2 USB ports, so I can plug it into the second one. So I'll plug it in there. Now because it's 9 streams, you do need a decent flash disk. Some flash disks aren't as fast as they say they are. They'll do bursts at high speed, but they won't sustain it. So make sure you're using a good quality flash disk. Now what we'll do is we'll go to the record palette because I've got to show you that. So it's in the output menu here. If we can cut across the UI, I'll turn off the live stream. Now you can see it's the same palette as the ATEM Mini Pro models use. So what we need to do is set the ISO recording on. So this is the control here. So if you turn that on, now will enable the ISO, and you can start recording. Now I can do that on the front panel, which I will do. You can do it from the UI as well. And there it is now. Now I'm recording to the disk. I can change between some of the different sources, do some cuts to different sources here. And I can do some transitions, maybe do some dissolves. There's a dissolve. So it's just like a real job. Got a nice fast transition there. Now it's worth mentioning that you can use a USB hub and use multiple disks. If you're recording with multiple disks, it'll move from disk to disk as each disk fills up. So you can record forever if you keep adding empty disks. You can also use a Blackmagic multi-dock, as it's 4 SSD disks on a single USB port. So that's really nice. Now, while it's recording, let's plug, I've got the USB actually, I'm controlling the computer by the USB. I'm not actually using it via the network, I'm using the USB connection. So I have webcam coming into the computer. So let's launch an app. I'll just use QuickTime Player. I had that open a second ago, so there it is there. And if I go to the file menu and use a video recording, I can show the webcam source. There it is there. So what I've got going on now is I've got a recording going on while I've got webcam source. And also, let's start streaming to YouTube. So if I turn on streaming, now I'll run the streaming. And so now I'm actually live streaming to YouTube, and it's now really heavily loaded up. I'm doing 9 streams of recording because I'm doing an ISO recording. I've got USB webcam going on the screen here, and I've also got live streaming to YouTube all at the same time. So now if I do some more transitions, I just keep doing that, and it's pretty nice. Now, what I can do is I can now stop recording and we can go and have a look and see what it looks like on the computer. So I'll stop recording, and I'll stop streaming as well. And I'll close this. Now I'll take my disk and I'll plug it into the computer so we can have a look what it looks like on the computer. So I've got 2 USB ports on the side of the computer. So I'll minimize my software controller so you can switch across to the ATEM. I don't want to use that as a backup. So there it is there. So here's my disk that I've just recorded on the ATEM Mini Pro ISO. So I can open up the disk and see what's in there. You can see I've got a whole folder with all the files that have been recorded when I was doing my recording. Let's have a look inside. So you can see I've got my folder with my ISO files. You can see the 8 inputs there. I'll go back. I've got the audio source files. I've also got a program recording here. And this is the DaVinci Resolve ISO file. Sorry, this is the program file. So basically it's the edit. So if I double click that, I've got DaVinci running in the background, and it'll now open up that folder. And there's my edit. So this is what I just did on the switcher. So if you look at the timeline, this is the cut page. I did a whole bunch of cuts and some transitions over here. And then I was talking for a while, and I did love talking. And I was talking for a while, and then I did a few more transitions towards the end here. And you can see now that I can move edits around and really retrim and do all kinds of different edits. And if I go in here, I can see I've got my ISO files in here. There's all my different camera views. So there's, that's just the recording from that one camera. So it's all really nice. You can do all kinds of editing. So, what's also great is the Blackmagic RAW files I record. If you can record them in the camera, you can change those over and link to those if you wanted to. Now, I can also use the sync bin so I can see all the camera views. So if I go up to the sync bin up here, what I've now got is, go back to my master. Now I've got all the camera views back in a multi-view because they're all synchronized. They've all got the same time code. Now I can run up and down and now re-edit, especially if you're using the speed editor, this is really fast. And I can now, re-edit or change and drop, I can use the source override edit mode, which is this one here, and it'll actually edit, various shots into the timeline and sync up all the time code and everything for you. So it's really fast to create new edits. And if you're using Blackmagic RAW files from the cameras, which you can also select to switch over to link to, you can finish in Ultra HD. And you can also do color correction because they're all film gamma. So I'll switch back to the normal media pool. And so, I think it's amazing if you think you can record, this switch will record 9 video streams all at the same time. It's an incredibly powerful model. It's very exciting. So the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO is just starting production now. So it'll probably be appearing in about a week or so. It'll be priced at $1,295, and I can't wait to see how people sort of use it. I think it's going to be really exciting. Okay, so next I wanted to talk about how to add streaming to our SDI range of switches. Our Blackmagic Web Presenter has been a real popular streaming solution, but it was quite limited. It was basically USB webcam only, and it was the webcam was only 720p. So we wanted to totally redesign this model, but we also wanted to reposition what it was used for. So it was more than just a simple redesign. We wanted the new model to be more focused on sort of high-end workflows and to work with our most powerful switches that we have. The ATEM Mini in many ways can now handle the HDMI workflows. So we really wanted a newer model that was really designed for an SDI workflow only. We also needed a solution for ATEM Television Studio and our ATEM Constellation switches. So we've designed a whole new model, and it's dramatically more powerful. I'll go across here, and we've got a bit of space, and I can show you. I'll bring the unit out. So here it is. Here it is here. You can see the similar size. It's the same size as the old design, but it's a whole new design. Basically, our thoughts were it's a bit like a television transmitter for the streaming age. It's kind of the philosophy we used when we designed it. It's way more advanced than the previous model and it has a lot more features. It removes a few of the features we don't need, like the HDMI input, because we don't need that now. But it's been designed specifically for high-end broadcast and live event work. So it's a much more sort of higher end. So we've repositioned it, and changed the underlying philosophy about what it's really now for. Now it's only a third rack width, so it uses our Teranex Mini rack shelves if you want to rack mount it. Let's have a look at the back. I'll turn it around. You can see the rear side. I think you get a close-up of that. So quite different to the old model. Now it's got a 12G SDI input, and it's got a Teranex down converter on the input. So you can take any HD or Ultra HD input and stream to it. It doesn't matter what the input video is, it just works. You'll see that there's also a loop, there's one loop 12G SDI output, so you can loop out to other equipment. And what that lets you do is you can build like an array of web presenters for multiple platforms, or even redundancy. For example, you could use the one web presenter for the YouTube primary stream and a separate web presenter for the YouTube secondary stream, and you can loop the SDI input across to all those different web presenters for the different platforms. It gives you a lot of redundancy. Now there's also a HDMI and a 3G SDI monitoring output, which I'll talk about in a minute. The reason we put a HDMI output on there for the monitoring is because you can just plug a computer monitor straight in. So even though the newer model is designed for SDI workflows, having that HDMI in there means you don't need to use a separate converter just to monitor the output. Now it still works with USB webcam. You see there's a USB on the back there, but now it's 1080p webcam. So it's much better than the previous model, which was only 720p with the webcam. You can also see the Ethernet connections there. So it's got the live streaming now built in. It's got a professional H.264 codec built in. So it'll now live stream direct to the platforms, to the online platforms. You don't need any computer software now. It's all self-contained in this one small unit. And you can use both the USB webcam and the live streaming at the same time. They both work at the same time. You can also see we've got two power options on the rear panel there as well. There's the AC for regular power, plus there's now a broadcast 4-pin 12-volt DC power for backup power. Now you could use that with a separate power supply, and so you'd have two AC sources, one direct and one using the power supply, or that could be a battery, so you could stay on air in a power failure. So it's really exciting. Now let's turn it around, we'll have a look at the front again, and we'll plug it in and get it up and running. We need to plug in a whole bunch of connections, so I'll plug in some power. I've got everything here. I've been plugging a lot of connections in today. So I've got some power, I've got my Ethernet, which I'll plug in. I'll use the HDMI monitoring out, which I'll plug in, and I'll plug my SDI source. When that SDI source is coming from the ATEM Mini here, so we've just converted the program out, so I can get a nice source there and plug it all in. So you should be able to see that on the front panel. Now, it's all up and running. Now the old models, the front panel was actually optional. Now it's included as standard, so you get that front panel as standard. Because it live streams internally, you really need the front panel for control. It's got that dedicated on-air button, so you really need to have access to that. And there's also menus as well. So let's see how that works. So we've got a computer up on the rear screen, if we can switch across to that. And that's got YouTube and a web browser, so we can bring the unit on air. And that's all there is to it. Now you can also do this from the utility. I've got a Mac over here, which I've got plugged into the network. This is plugged into the network as well. I can run the utility and show you. So if you can just pan across here and get a cut of the computer over here. Here's the here's the Blackmagic Web Presenter utility. So I can go in there and you can see I've got the settings in here. It's similar settings to the ATEM Mini, so it's very familiar. So that looks like the streaming tab in the ATEM Mini. So it's quite a familiar user interface. I've already entered the streaming settings in here, so it's faster to show you, so I didn't really have to do any of that. And so that's nice. So if we go back to the unit, you can see the front panel also has all the buttons for the LCD menus, and you can change settings from the front panel as well. So you can turn on the menu button over here. You can see I've got some menus. And the LCD also includes video monitoring and audio meters. There's a really nice big, if you look at the status of that LCD and you can get a bit of a close-up of that, you see a really big on-air indicator. I wanted an on-air indicator that's big enough that when you're looking across the room at a rack, you can actually see which web presenters are on air. So that's why we needed that a bit larger. The input video standard's also on there as well. And there's also a time counter showing how long the stream's been running. It even includes a day count. So it's actually day, hours, minutes, and seconds. The network status is there as well. Now it also supports the phone tethering like the ATEM Mini that I showed you before. If the Ethernet goes down, you can switch over. So you can plug in the phone, a mobile phone, into the USB. The LCD will show what network is connections active because there's actually a network indicator there, whether it's Ethernet or mobile data. So I don't need to show you how the tethering works because it's the same as the ATEM Mini Pro I just showed you. Now there's also, you'll notice on the front, there's a USB-C connection on the front panel. That also works as a webcam. So what's really interesting about that is you can basically walk up to the front of the unit and plug straight into it and monitor video with any software that works with a webcam. I was just using QuickTime Player before. Now that's great for diagnostics. And the utility also works through USB or Ethernet. So you can walk right up to the front of a rack and plug into the unit and get both live video and change the settings, all in that one USB connection. Plus you can plug a phone into the front panel as well. So that USB also supports a phone, so you can plug the phone tethering in. So if you had an internet problem when you're running, you could actually go and plug your phone into the front panel. So that USB on the front is really flexible. So of course, you know, what other things can you do? Well, one of the interesting uses you can use is with editing. Now on the Mac over here that I was showing with DaVinci, I've got an Ultra Studio Mini monitor connected to the Mac. It converts the timeline out to live video for monitoring, which is how you generally would use that. When you're video editing, you want to see your user interface, but it's nice to have another video monitor showing the actual live video. Now, if I plug that into the Web Presenter HD, I can actually use it to stream to remote clients. So let's connect the Ultra Studio Mini monitor into the Web Presenter HD. Now I've got that connection here, so I'll unplug the ATEM Mini source and I'll plug in my ATEM Mini monitor, and that'll switch over. Now, what we can do is go across to the timeline. So if we cut back to the timeline here, I've got the utility running, so I'll quit that. And now I'll come back here to the timeline. And you can see now I've got the video from the editing timeline playing out to, I'll loop that and play it. This is my editing timeline now running out. And you can basically send the stream to clients and they can watch the edit. You just need to set the YouTube stream to low latency and it works really well. So you can see the Web Presenter is actually really flexible. You can use it for all kinds of tasks. I mean, who knows what else it could be used for. It's really quite nice. So remember the two monitoring outputs we talked about before. Let's connect those up and we can see how those work. So if we come back to the Web Presenter here. Now I've plugged in the monitoring. If we can switch it up onto the screen here, and we can see what's going on. In fact, I'll plug the switcher back in. I'll unplug the timeline and plug back into the switcher so I can do some cutting. So you can see there it is. Now you can see if I cut to that directly, I've got a feed into the switcher. This is a high-end broadcast streaming transmitter, so we really wanted to do something serious with the monitoring. So it includes a lot more information than you'd sort of expect on a simple monitoring out. Basically, it's got everything I needed when I worked in post-production. You know, I was putting in digital systems back in the 90s, and I needed, you know, a lot of outboard gear that had different sort of information that I needed to make sure the whole system worked. I've taken pretty much all of that and just put it in this one tech monitoring output. So let me explain what's really going on this video output. So if you can cut to that, you'll see that output directly. So obviously we've got a very large video display. It's got audio meters, and those audio meters, you can select the type of audio meter. The VU meter is what we're using here. It's got the correct ballistics. Now there's a title at the top left-hand side, and you can change that. So for example, if you had multiple web presenters doing different streams, you could have like YouTube primary, YouTube secondary, you could name them, and that title at the top left will change. And it really helps you keep track of which web presenter is what if you're switching the monitoring. Like you could use, because there's an SDI monitoring out, you could actually run it into a router and have one monitor switching across all the different statuses of all the different web presenters. You got a nice big on-air indicator. You got a time counter for streaming, which is like the front panel. There's a bunch of streaming details as well. The platform, the streaming standard, the quality, and the streaming key. Obviously, we're only showing part of the streaming key. You don't want the whole key, otherwise people will just hack your stream, so we don't want to do that. Now, we have a nice little area for video status, and that's all the video input information. So there's a film strip, so you can see the last 6 seconds of the inputs. You can see a recent history of what's been going on as the video source. There's also lots of technical data. There's the input video standard, there's colorimetry, time code, CRC check, Luma and Chroma bit activity. Now that's an interesting display. Basically what you get as an X is displayed when the bit's changing between high and low, or it's an L when it's low, or it's a H when it's a high bit. And what that's really good for is seeing if you've got 10 or 8-bit video. Now if it was 8-bit video, the bottom 2 bits on the right-hand side there will be Ls because they don't have any data in them. So it's a really good quality check, and it also can tell you if you have a stuck bit in some of the upstream processing. So you can really see what kind of things are going on. For example, if you saw some banding or something strange happening on the stream, you can have a quick look at the bit activity, see what the quality of the video level is, if it's 10-bit, or if you've got a weird stuck bit or some kind of other fault. They're broadcast engineers who actually know about the SDI standard might notice that all the bits are low when there's black video. That's because we've subtracted the SDI offsets to make the bit activity a bit easier to understand. So that's what we've done there. Because it's a more user-based feature than it is a sort of a technical-based feature for the video standard. Now, the audio input area is actually quite similar to the video area. You see there's an audio waveform that shows the last 6 seconds of the audio. So it's a recent history of what's been going on the sound. There's also details of the audio channel status word, and these details are encoded. These are the details, basically they're encoded with the audio data. Now we decode those bits and display the results. So you can see some of the information there like sample frequency, emphasis, word length, origin, time of day, sample address. There's the aux bit status. Now not all products that do audio use this information, but generally audio works without it. But there's a lot of information there. It's almost like additional sort of information. Some stuff's used like emphasis, but not all of it. The CRC is checked and displayed. There's also a bit activity indicator like the video, but this one's showing the entire AES kind of audio word. And it's a really nice way of seeing the audio bit depth. Like you can check to see if you've got 16, 20 or 24 bit audio. The 4 flag bits are also shown and they're labeled with the V, U, C and P above those. They're the actual flag bits. Now this is, there's also an embedded audio status indicator. Now these show you which channels in the SDI connection actually have data embedded into them. Now a lot of equipment can actually embed more channels than they really use. Like for example, our HyperDeck, if it embeds 16 channels, even if you've got it set to stereo, so there's only actually audio on 2 of the channels. But this is a great way to see what audio channels are present in the SDI connection. And if there's a channel present, it'll be displayed as a P. So you can see that there. Now you also notice at the bottom, there's actually 2 graphs. Now this is the same data rate and cache indicators that are on the ATEM Mini, or the ATEM Mini Pro I should say, or the ATEM Mini Extreme now. But there's actually a graph of the last 60 seconds of the history of what's been going on. So the data rate for the last 60 seconds is really nice because it shows you kind of the recent history of the data rate needed to encode this video. Now the data rate is really dependent on the quality and the frame rate and also the input video. So there's a lot of things that can actually affect how much data you're encoding to. So what you're seeing here is what the codec is actually generating. This is the data rate the codec's generating. So it's also showing you what data rate you need from the network to get a good quality stream. So that's a really nice indicator, and it's always on, even if you're not live, on air, it still shows that. There's also the cache status for the last 60 seconds as well, and this shows you a lot about the quality of the internet connection, of the network connection. So, if you're having problems with the network connection, you can see that going up, and because the cache is struggling to try and get the data out of the unit. So it's really exciting. So the technical monitoring output has really got a lot of useful information in it. Now the Blackmagic Web Presenter HD is going to be available now, and it'll be $4.95. And it includes the front panel with the LCD menus now. It's got the live stream built into it to go to YouTube, Facebook, Twitter and more. It also supports webcam via USB. It includes this broadcast technical monitoring, and it supports full remote control via the software utility on Mac and Windows. It's only a 3rd rack width, so you can get like 3 streaming channels in a single rack width if you put 3 of them. But it really fits perfectly next to the ATEM TV Studio HD. It adds streaming to all our SDI-based switcher models. So we think it's going to be a really exciting product. So now I want to talk about Pocket Cinema Camera 6K. Now it's been received really well, and so like the 4K model, it's a true digital film camera. It's got a nice low light sensor in 6K, it's EF lens mount, so it works with lots of lenses. The large sensor is just perfect with EF lenses. There's so many Canon lenses around that have EF lens mounts, so it's very common to find great lenses with it. Records to internal cards as well as external USB discs. It's got 3D lookup tables. It includes Blackmagic RAW and Generation 4 color science. It's got a wonderful film gamma, supports ProRes recording. It's got Blackmagic OS. It's got a really big screen for a handheld camera. A lot of handheld cameras have tiny screens, but this is a big screen. Makes it really easy to focus. And there's tons of focus assist features. False color, histogram, zebra, frame guides, focus peaking, just lots of stuff. Plus the HDMI monitoring output includes overlays for film sets. You can set up like on-set monitoring, but it also includes the studio camera features that we've been using with ATEM Mini here. So it's really a production camera and a studio camera in the one design. Very easy to use, very high quality, and it's getting used on some really high-end work, and kind of like what we hoped it would. So what does that mean? It's doing high-end digital film really well, and it's being rigged and used on high-end film projects. So we really started thinking about that and started thinking about a model that might have more features. So we were thinking, could we put some of the features from the Ursa Mini Pro into the pocket camera design? And we've managed to do that. And so today we have a new model. It's a 3rd camera in the range, and so I'll come across and I'll show you. The new model is called Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K Pro, but it's actually a whole new design. It's slightly bigger, and because it's got a lot of new features included. So I'll bring one out and you can have a look and you can see for yourself. So here it is here. So you can see I'll put it beside the other cameras. So you can see from a design point of view, it's very similar. It has similar controls, So it's very familiar to use, but, you know, because it's a member of the Pocket Cinema camera family, and you can see how it fits in there. So I can show you the front. You can see it's really similar. If you can get a close-up of that, you can see how that looks. It's also very similar on the rear side. It has the same, I'll turn it around there. It's got the same amazing 6K sensor. However, we've actually upgraded it to generation 5 color science from the 12K camera. So it produces some amazing cinematic images. So I think the first thing you can really notice there is it's got a new LCD screen. It's a high brightness HDR screen. It also tilts up and down. So if I turn the camera on, I'll get the screen up, and you can see really how bright that screen is. And so it's great for outdoor shooting, and I can tilt it up and I can tilt it down. So you see there it is there, it tilts. So you've got a lot of control there. So if I tilt it down, you can shoot high up. You can hold it up high and shoot high up, and if I'm tilted down, I can shoot really low and get a nice sort of low view, you know. Also, tilting is great for the menus. It helps to give you better access to the menus there. So you can see, and you can change the menus. So it's quite nice. So we've also, the other thing we've done is we've upgraded the battery, and now it's using an NPF 570 Sony style battery. Now it supports a lot longer battery life, which I think is important when you're recording the external discs. You know, when you're running external discs, the camera powers the disc, so having more power really helps. So let me show you the battery in the bottom here. So it's the same type of battery door. There it is there, so it's a larger battery. There it is there, it'll power back up. So now what's the other exciting feature of this is the, turn it back off, back on again, turned itself off. So what's also really nice is this new model has built-in ND filters. Now they're actually motor driven, so they are a little different to the Ursa Mini Pro ND filters. And if you look at the back here, we've got ND motor, the filter controls here. So let me remove the lens, and you can actually see them working if I take the lens off. So I'll do that. I always get nervous taking lenses off. So if you get a close-up there, you can see into the front of the camera. Is that, maybe I'll point to the camera there and you can see it. So now I can change the filters, and you can see them move. You got that? And you can see them change. So there's two filters in there changing in, and they both work together. And there's also an indication on the rear, so let me put the lens back on. Oops, there I am. So if I go around the back here, you can see the ND filters changing. Again, if you can get a shot of that. There's the ND filters there. And you can see there's actually also a status on the LCD to show you what filters are applied. So I think it's much more flexible. I'll turn the filters off. It's fun, I could actually just sit here doing this all day. So it's great, of course, having the ND filters built in because it's much more portable solution. This is a portable camera, but it gives you total control of the shutter angle when you're in bright conditions because you can just pull those ND filters in, cut down the light. Now there's also support for an electronic, an optional electronic viewfinder. So there's a separate viewfinder that you can purchase and add to the camera if you need it. It's called the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera Pro EVF, and it bolts right on top of the camera, right there. So let's have a look. I'll show you the EVF. I'll bring it out. You can see it's super tiny there. So you can see there it is there. I can get a shot of that. There it is there, and you can see the underside. That's where it plugs into the camera. And you can see the lens there, and so I've got a really nice glass lens. You know, it's a professional viewfinder with a glass lens. You know, most viewfinders are just plastic, and you know, especially for portable cameras, and they scratch easy. They don't look really clear. This is a glass lens. It's very accurate. The focus, it's really clean and very clear. In fact, underneath, there's a focus adjustment on the bottom there, so you can adjust it. Now, because it's a professional viewfinder, we've actually also got eyepieces that are included with it. I'll bring them out. There's 4 eyepieces in total. So you've actually got some options. So you've got an eyepiece that's actually installed on it. Then there's a slightly larger version of that. Then there's also a very large one that's left and right-eyed. So you've got a few different options there. So I'll line them up there. And they come with it. So you don't have to buy them separately. Now the viewfinder is really easy to install. You just unscrew the cover on the top of the camera and then you can install it on top. So let me show you that. I'll unscrew the the cover on the camera. Got a screwdriver here. We'll take that off. There's the cover there. I'll just show you quickly. It's just a plastic cover, just covers over the hole. And now you'll see there's a space on the top of the camera. If you can get a shot of that, you can see where the viewfinder plugs in. So all I need to do is plug the viewfinder in. Probably should turn the camera off when I do this. And I'll tilt it up. There it is. I can tighten it down. Just finger tighten it. And there it is, it's installed on the camera. A shot there. Now it tilts up and down like I was just doing to install it. So you can see you've got a huge range. So you can imagine with a nice big eyepiece on there, you know, how nice that looks. Now the focus adjustment is under there. And if I turn the camera around, you can see, I can get a shot of that with the focus adjustment. You can see the lens move when I adjust the focus. Can you see that? So there it is there. So that's under there. Now there's a focus pattern built in to the camera to allow you to get really accurate focus. So you just go into the monitor menu and you can access the focus chart from there. It's a really bright OLED display, so the sensor will, it's got a sensor on the back, so it turns the OLED on and off when you're not using it. And the main LCD will also turn off when you're using the viewfinder to save power. And you can see you can change the viewfinders, the eyepieces out. I'm actually left-eyed, so I like the left eye eyepiece. And so it's a real professional solution. Now, if we look at the side of the camera, you can see we still have the SD card slots on the side. So we've got them there, so you can open up the card slots. So you've got the same media that the other card, that the other models use. And we also have on the side connections here, so you can get a bit of a close-up of that. We've also got the very similar connections on the side. We still have the HDMI output for monitoring. We've got the USB for recording to external flash disks. We've got the headphone connector. We've also got the video type mic input connector, but we now have an extra XLR connector. So you can plug in two separate microphones, and they're both phantom powered, or you can of course plug in from professional audio gear. You can actually plug stereo XLR sources now. And you know, as far as phantom power goes, the new battery's got lots of power for the battery. Now the other thing we've got is we have a new battery grip. You know, if you're doing very long shoots, you really want it to, you know, it's nice to have a battery grip. It's called the Blackmagic Pocket Camera Pro Grip. Sorry, the Blackmagic Pocket Camera Battery Pro Grip. I always get that wrong for some reason. I've got some neural damage that's causing issues with the name. Now it holds 2 extra batteries, but it's a little different. It supports the same large batteries that the camera uses, so those newer type batteries, and it bolts onto the bottom of the camera. So here it is there, you can see, and it's a bit different. It doesn't displace the internal battery. So there it is there. So what you can do is installed on the bottom of the camera, and it won't displace. You're adding 2 extra batteries and you keep the battery in the camera. So I think this is a better design. Now, if you see the top of it, how it does that, it's got these power pins there, and that's how that talks to the camera. So there's a spot on the battery tray also to support. There's a cover on the bottom of the camera there, which I'll unscrew. And what that gives you is access to the power pins on the bottom of the camera, and if you see if you can get a close-up of that. Now there's actually a spot on the battery tray to store that little cover I just took off, so you don't lose it. And then if you take the battery grip off, you can then reinstall that on the bottom. So let's put the battery grip on, and you can have a look. So basically just mount it down like that, and spin the screw, and there it is. It's all on the camera. Turn the camera back on. So now I'm running 3 batteries in the camera. So it's a monster when you've got that installed. Look at that. And the battery tray slides out, so you can slide the batteries out and you can change them. And the camera still runs, it won't turn off. So, and you can uninstall it by just running the screw thread back out again. And then you can take it off. So you can really just add it and take it off as you go. You know, it's really nice. And so that's the battery grip. So the new Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K Pro will be priced at $2,495, and it's in stock and it's available now. The Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera Pro EVF will be priced at $495, and that's also available now and it's in stock. And the Blackmagic Pocket Camera Battery Pro Grip is priced at $145, and that's also available now. Now the battery grip is sold without the batteries because these, NP F570 batteries, you can get them anywhere, so you can source those yourself. So we think the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K Pro is a really great addition to the family. You can see we have 3 great cameras depending on the kind of work you're doing. They're all professional digital film cameras. They can be used for all kinds of work, and they're very, very portable. So they're amazing. So one last thing we have just before we go, we also have a software update that's due. It's not quite ready yet, but it's coming soon. So what we're doing is, one of the things I didn't show you on the back is we have new software for the 4K and the 6K Pocket Cinema cameras. Now all the cameras get a new RGB histogram. So the current luminance but only histogram doesn't always show you clipped images. If you clip in a single color, sometimes you can't tell because it's not clipping in the luminance. So the new RGB histogram fixes that. And so that's really nice. So if I turn on the 4K camera here, you can see, we'll get a bit of a close-up. You can see that's the RGB histogram there, and I've probably not got a lot of really good things to point it at that's going to show you that working properly, but you can see it there. I'll just stop moving the camera around so you can kind of see it. Let me get a good view of that there. So that RGB histogram is much nicer, and there it is on the 4K model, and all the models will get that new histogram when the software update goes out. So I'll place it back in line there. So that's really nice. Plus the other great thing is we're upgrading all the color science in all the models. So both the 4K and the 6K models will get the new Generation 5 color science. So all the models will have the latest color science from actually the 12K camera research that we've been doing. So it's really exciting. Now that software update will be free. It supports the Blackmagic Pocket Camera 4K, the 6K, and it'll upgrade the new 6K Pro as well. It's called Camera Update 7.3, and it'll be available in about a month or so. So we're still doing a lot of debugging. Obviously with COVID, it's a bit tough to get things through QA because everyone's everywhere. Every 5 minutes there's some other breakout. So we're working as hard as we can to get that out the door, and that'll be a free update. So that's about all we have for today. So I think we've got some really nice switches with the new ATEM Mini Extremes. They're very powerful. We have an amazing professional cinema camera with the new Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K Pro. It's so small when you consider how much we've actually built into it. It's incredible. We have an amazing streaming solution with this new Blackmagic Web Presenter HD. It's the broadcast transmitter for the streaming world. So I think it's really nice. And I've got to thank all the engineers who've worked so hard on these new products at Blackmagic. There's engineers all over the world, and everyone's come together and worked really hard. It's tough with COVID, but everyone's done an amazing job. And again, thanks for all you guys, for all your feedback. It's always great working together. It's an exciting industry, and we just love being part of it. I'm getting older, and it's been doing it for a long time, so it's great to just keep bringing out more and more new products. It's really exciting. When we work together, there's no limit on what we can do, and there's no limit to what's possible. So again, please remain safe, and I hope it won't be too much longer. We'll be back at trade shows talking again. I love talking as these videos get rather long. So take care, and we'll talk soon. And
okay,
take care.
everybody.
Bye.
So that was the live stream. Let me maybe I mute that. But yes, so now that was the live stream. So it was definitely not what I expected, as you guys saw at the beginning of the stream, which was I was thinking of something bigger, that they were going to add, like Arri was going to add Blackmagic wrong. Clearly I was wrong, but there is a new camera that I don't think anybody was sort of expecting, but let's go through some of the things. The webcaster was cool, but I'm going to just start off with, I think the Pocket Cinema Camera 6K Pro, which is the new camera that they announced, definitely one of the highlights. But I actually think, you know what, I actually got more excited, to be perfectly honest with you. I got more excited with the new ATEM Mini X Extreme in terms of the live stream switching. And just now the capabilities of things that I've always wanted to do with the ATEM Mini Pro that I have, it is now available. And the fact that the base model of this Extreme Pro one is the same price as the ISO one, and then you can also do ISO recording. That's what was the price? $1,300. I think it was $1,300 for the ISO version. Which, by the way, you can pay almost 4 times just for like a 4-input HD switcher. The fact that you can get, or not a 4K, but a 4K. A 4K 4-input HDMI switcher, you could pay 4 times as much just for a 4-input. an 8 input, you could spend like 5 times more. So that is definitely something very interesting, very exciting with that. So in terms of the switchers, the new ATEM Extreme ATEM Mini Extremes looks very exciting. I've definitely got to find a way to get one in so I can really test it out. But I know that you guys didn't come here to talk about switchers. But I just got to say, for me, that was one of the highlights of this stream. But let's talk about the camera, the new camera, the Pocket 6K, which, okay, so let's just do a quick recap for those of you, because I know some of you guys are coming in a little bit late. I see my buddy Juan Ortiz is in the chat. What up, Juan? How you doing? Glad for you to join me. But yeah, basically, this is basically the exact same camera as this, in terms of what's inside for the most part. In terms of image quality, it's the same. It's the same sensor, same capabilities, 6K up to 50 frames per second, 4K up to 60 frames per second, 2K up to 120 frames per second. So if you have the Pocket 6K, it's from a software control, it's from a software side, it's pretty much the same for the most part. Really, they've changed the body. Now, I will say this, based on, and I'm going to be exploring to see if I can find an image of this, of the Pocket Cinema camera. So don't mind me, but yeah, so the big thing that take away from this new camera is, of course, the built-in NDs. It has built-in NDs. It looks, now I didn't see how many ND stops you could do, but it looks like they have 2 filters. So they have probably a 2 and then a 4, and then they have probably an option to combine them both for 6. So hopefully that you can get at least 6 stops of NDs, but built-in NDs, finally. That was one of the things that I was really bugging about when the 6K was first announced. Love the camera. I still got the camera in the back. But one of the things that really bugged me with, oh, let me turn this off. Sorry. But what really bugged me about the 6K was the fact that you had all this space between where the original sensor was, because originally they designed it for the 4K, which is micro four thirds, and this new EF mount. I was like, why didn't you put built-in NDs? Well, they now have done it. I will say this, the body looks a little bit better. It's still, let's be honest, the body is still a bit fuggly, but it's at least, in terms from an ergo standpoint, it's at least a little bit better, because from what I could tell, the screen is not as wide as the original Pocket 6K or the Pocket 4K. It's a little bit more compressed, which means the body's a little bit smaller. It's a little bit more boxier. And now, another thing that's really great is the fact that they've added their own battery control, which they did the last time, but this one, you can actually change, so you can pull out and change the slots in the battery grip without having the camera turn off. So that is great, that you can hot swap batteries. That was one of my big gripes with the original Pocket hand grip. So that seems like a great thing to have. And also the fact that EVF, I know a lot of people who are big EVF people who like looking through a viewfinder, they're going to be super happy. Blackmagic, I just feel like if you put in an articulating screen, but why didn't you just go either some fully articulated where you could flip it up? But I think it's great that it's clearly that to me that they took feedback, because that's was a complaint that a lot of people had, was that the screen didn't articulate to at least tilt so you can move it. And that was one of my complaints too, because if you do put one of these cameras on a gimbal, or even if you shoot it up, if you move it anywhere out of your, just from eye level, all of a sudden, your thing is hit and you couldn't see it. But now you can flip it and articulate. So these are all fantastic changes, and it's priced at the same price that the original Pocket 6K was launched at. So now this one's $2,500. The 6K, of course, at $2,000. Then they threw in this little side thing at the end where they're now adding basically what Red does with their histogram. Basically, you can now see when your red and green and blues are going to clip. So big improvement. I think that's great that they're adding that in. But I'm gonna go look at the channel, see what you guys are saying, and then I want to get your thoughts. Let's see here. Is it still Super 35? Yes, Awaken Soul. It is still a Super 35 sensor. Again, all the basics of the Pocket 6K is pretty much in this camera. Oh, by the way, clearly they saw the reaction from Canon. I don't know if it's directly from Canon, but you notice that they added a second audio input, which I think is great that they added that. But my question now is, well, can you actually have more inputs now? Or do you have to choose between, XLR1, XLR2, and then either or with a 3.5 jack? Because like on the Canon C70, I can have XLR1, XLR2, and 3.5 jack if I want to. So is it still 2 sources of audio, or can you actually have 3? I don't know if I heard that. If you guys saw that, let me know. Let's see here. Adrian, a great addition. Yeah, I think overall this is going to be a great addition. Is it big enough for me to make the upgrade? I don't know, to be quite frank with you. I don't know if it's the improvement. I gotta give Blackmagic credit. They have definitely listened to a lot of people's complaints because they put in a bigger battery. Now, how long will this battery last? I don't know if MPF batteries are going to last that much longer. They definitely will last longer, but how much, I don't know. But they put in a bigger battery. They put in a tilting screen. They put in, literally, things that people have picked apart about the 4K and the 6K. They put it in this camera outside of autofocus, which I think that's just, I guess they're just not ready for that, which is fine. The people that use these cameras, they don't really use autofocus that much anyway. So, would I love to see good continuous autofocus with this camera? Absolutely. But I can understand that. Good uniform color tolerance. Yes. So now they're adding Gen 5 to the 4K, the 6K, and this 6K Pro. So I'm glad they're doing that. I was considering the R5 or the A7S II, but I think this sold me. I mean, yeah, I can't knock anybody that will look at this, because I'm like, if you look at the R5, the A7S III, the fact that this thing, to me, the NDs are like the big selling point. Like, it's the thing I always tell, I wish Sony and Canon would do for more of their mirrorless cameras, is put a built-in ND, some sort of ND system in there. It makes such a huge difference when you have a built-in ND system. Such a huge difference. So I'm so happy that they added it. And if you're looking to add it between R5 and A7S III, I'm like, look, this is something you gotta really consider in the mix now as well. So basically, 80% of the Red Arri for 20% of the price. I wouldn't say that. That gets a lot more complicated. I won't say 80%. For 20% of the price, but I will say this: it's definitely, again, Blackmagic shaking things up and really being aggressive with the pricing. That really puts the pressure on those high cameras that have premium prices. Arri, again, Arri. Honestly, Arri, it's very hard for Arri to do anything wrong, for people to really sidestep away from Arri to something like Pocket, especially if you have the means to acquire one. Red, maybe. That's definitely debatable. Let's go on. Invisibliss. By the way, I saw you on the channel, the chat before. Thank you for joining. I really appreciate it. Wish there would have been offered SDI. I agree. I think SDI, if they really SDI, I'm like, now they're really coming with something. But I still think what they've added was great. The older models being kept uniform is great. Again, I agree too, Marani. Sorry, I checked out for a mini. Is it EF mount? Yes, it is EF mount. Awaken, it is EF mount still. It's hard to it's hard to adequately state how great a product the 6K Pro is. Yeah, no, I could no, like I said, what you're getting, a Super 35 6K camera. I just wish it was in a. I just wish there was a different mount. Like I wish it was in the RF, but I'm being picky right now. But a Super 35 6K camera that shoots 6K up to 50 frames per second, it with nice compression raw, with a great color science and great like sensor. It's really hard to beat for $2,500. It's really hard to beat. The ATEM is crazy. Yes, I agree, Adrian. Eugene, hey, what's up, man? Thanks for joining, man. They have obviously been listening to their customer base. Absolutely, like literally, I've mentioned it before. Everything they like, every critique, almost every critique outside of the autofocus, but almost every critique, the size, the inability to articulate the screen, the fact they added EVF, bigger batteries. They literally listen to a lot of their customers and the feedback, and that we got to give kudos for Blackmagic for that, because a lot of companies will come in and be like, we'll sell you the same stuff, and or make only minor little improvements to their cameras and just keep pumping them out. Whereas Blackmagic really does take the feedback and they really do try to go different ways to enhance it. So kudos to Blackmagic for that. The indies are huge. Yep, agree. Indies are totally huge. Full-size HDMI, yep. Full-size HDMI, like I said, pretty much the same. No super expensive CFast cards will be able to use M2 SSDs. Yeah, okay. Yes, you can use M2 SSDs, but me personally, if you've been following the channel, you know how I feel about recording externally out. At least, especially recording to like a USB-C port out to like an SSD. I don't trust it. I would rather pay the money to have a secure CFast card than record something externally, because you can still record everything to CFast cards. I get it, they're expensive, but honestly, the cost of security is far more important to me than just going for cheap. Sometimes you get what you pay for, and it's not that good. So obviously it's good that they have SSDs, but I still say I will not do SSDs. I'm not going to record SSDs on any of these cameras. I will only record to CFast or, if possible, SD cards. All right. What's up with the color science update? Increase the dynamic range? No. No increase in dynamic range. Honestly, what it does is it just compresses the image, so the image is a bit more suppressed. But it doesn't give you... from what I can tell, it doesn't really give you any more dynamic range. It's just the image is a bit more suppressed. You just have to stretch it out now more. It's a lot more flatter. But from what I can tell, the dynamic range isn't any different, if that makes any sense. So hopefully that... but if you have the Pocket 6K right now, you can actually gain access to the Gen 5. Now, I don't know if it's a bug with 17 where they're giving you access it because they're just reading Blackmagic Raw, but I was able to upload Blackmagic Raw to the Gen 5 on Resolve 17. You can just switch it to Gen 5 and it'll switch. I've been doing that for quite a while now. So at least for the 6K, I don't know about the 4K, but at least for the 6K, you could access Gen 5. So, but really the only difference is it's flatter, but from what I can tell, there isn't a difference in dynamic range. It's just flatter, if that makes any sense. All right. Morani, the screen is actually 1500 nit brightness per the product page. Oh, that's great. That's great, man. Okay, so we got so it's an HDR screen. Now the question is, can we actually set it to actually be like HD? Can we actually make it work for HDR? Can we have the settings set to HDR? Because if we can, and you can actually monitor in camera HDR content, that, you know what, that may actually convince me to look at this. Well, number one, I'm definitely going to try to get it in. What if I will buy it for myself? That I don't know, but I am definitely going to get it in. So we'll see about that. Okay. Adrian, I think the indies are big enough to update if you shoot outside a lot. Oh, no, totally agree. Like honestly, indies. The moment they said indies, I'm like, if you're really on the fence, have been on the fence about the Pocket 6K or the Pocket 50K, and you're like, I don't know. The moment they said indies, if you were considering this camera, you should definitely look into it. Especially if you're considering between something like an R5, maybe an A7S III, some of those more mirrorless cameras. You definitely should be looking at this camera. I'm not going to say go buy it because I'm never telling you guys to go buy something that I haven't tested and seen myself. So, but it's definitely something you should be having your eye on. So the indies are 2, 4, 6. Okay, cool. So it is. So basically, one indie is 2, and then the other one is 4, and then you can lap them together to get the 6. That's basically what it is. Yeah. No Blackmagic Raw with Arri camera, sadly. Yeah. I get it. I knew it was a wild hunch, and I probably was going to be wrong, but look, this is still a pretty solid. We got a pretty good amount of nice updates that we're getting with this. So while I was wrong, I'm happy with what we got, both with the ATEM switchers and what we got with the 6K. All right, but it would have been Arri's job to talk about it first. Again, I don't know if they would have done a collaboration. They possibly could have done a collaboration effort, or like when he was going to announce this, and then Arri would drop their video. Because people do that all the time, where an announcement is made, and then Arri will drop, like another partner would just drop a video announcing this as well. So it was my hunch because, like I said, Arri's the only one that does not support Blackmagic Raw right now in the Blackmagic Raw tab that you can gain access to their gamma and their color space, which I was found interesting. But I was wrong. I'm wrong. I'll be wrong. This won't be the first. This isn't the first, and it won't be the last, probably. I wonder, though, if we should hold out to see they drop another camera over the summer. Honestly, I personally don't believe in holding out for what may come. No, if you are in need of an upgrade, or you need to feel like you need to want to take that next step, get the camera that best suits you now. Don't wait until what may come later. Just get what you have now. If for some reason you see something else that you may like, all right, then sell that one and then get that one. But for me personally, it's like, you should never be waiting for a camera to be released. You should just go ahead and get a camera to suit your needs now, and then see in the future if that is worth the upgrade. Because sometimes, yeah, there may be another camera, but the differences may not be worth it. I know quite a few people who have the Ursa Mini Pro, the original one. When the G2 was announced, they looked at it and said, you know what? The difference is it's not that serious, so it's not worth the upgrade. So they didn't bother upgrading. And that's fine. So, yeah, that's just my belief. Eugene, there would be no point with the RF mount if the sensor does not have top and phase autofocus to utilize those lenses to the full, especially as it only Super 35. I see the point I could see is that they could add. See, the point I say is, well, then you can possibly go with the RF mount. You could possibly go with like Canon's focal reducer, and now you could turn your Super 35 into a full frame sensor. There's a lot of options that you can really go with. It's just it gives you more options. You can go with RF lenses. It opens you up to the RF lenses, which are really, really great. If you haven't seen my video on the 28 to 70, it is a fantastic lens. I love that lens. Yeah, you may not be able to take advantage of the autofocus, but the glass is so good that it's almost worth just getting it just for the glass itself. And by the way, just work if you can get your lens closer to the sensor, it makes it better. Now, with EF, you're kind of locked to that, especially on how they design it. There may be some things where, like, you may not be able to get RA's PL adapters for Canons because of based on how they design it. But I think EF is fine. So if you are somebody that shoots with EF, this is definitely something you should definitely look at. Ari is for another time. I hope. Me too. I really hope because that would again that would be some industry shaking update if that was the case. All right. They made the cheapest internal ND camera. This is absolutely incredible. Yeah, yeah, they did. Now I think about it. Um, yeah, they did. So good again. Good job for Blackmagic for that. Though, if I remember correctly, the C50 is supposed to be around the same price, around $2,500. But let's be clear, this camera will still is a bully. This camera still bullies the C50. This will eat its lunch, throw it in the locker room, in its locker, and give it wedgies. Like this camera bullies the C50 from left to right, even at the same price. So, but it's just something I would bring up. Uh, Joel, is it Joel? Hopefully I'm saying your name right. Joel Matos, thanks for joining, man. Appreciate it. The new 6K Pro will have 4K and B-RAW cropped from 5.7K in the normal 6K. The B-RAW will only be available in 6K. Really? So I'm guessing they're using the same. So does that mean this is the same? This is a new sensor? Uh, is that on the website? Is that on the website? If you can you? I gotta actually let me pull up the link now. Let me just go ahead and pull up the link for that. Because if that's I should have done that, but oh well. Let's see here. So I'm gonna pull up and let's transition to, let's take a look at this. So the Blackmagic Pocket Camera 6K Pro. So let's see what we got here. Yeah, same carbon fiber, it's pretty much the same thing. 6K sensor, yep. 6K EF, ND filters. All right, let's see here. 6K Pro. Let's see, sensor size. Let's see if there's, okay. Let's see here. Compatible. Let's see. 6K models feature Super 35 sensor. Because I do know with the 6K you can with the 6K you can oversample in ProRes. You can oversample from the 5.7K. It will be the Blackmagic RAW would be different. If that's what you're saying. Let's look here for built-in ND filters, 246 stop filters, and they're IR. So they have IR and they have IR, which is great. So I don't know if Juan is still in the chat because I do know he has the Ursa Mini Pro. For anybody if you're in the chat and you have the Ursa Mini Pro, can you let me know because I know the IR filters were in there, but were they sufficient enough to deal with IR pollution, or did you still have to add some more IR cuts to it? Because if I remember a few people I took to, I think they still had to add some filters to it to deal with the IR pollution. But if you have the Ursa Mini Pro, can you remind me about that? Let's see here. So yeah, IR filters, IR waylays, so that's great. 13 stops. Then so you got the dual gain ISO, same dual gain ISO. So let's see if there's so yeah, same one, 400, 3200. So let's see, 4K up to 60 frames per second. Let's see here. Pocket cinema camera, and even 6K you can shoot. It sells 6K models will shoot 50 frames at 6K, 60 frames per second in the cropped 6K, 60 frames per second, 5.7. Yep. We're in anamorphic. Only 4K models can you shoot up to 60 frames per second, 4K DCI, 4K and Ultra HD. Let's see here. I don't see anything. Let's see here. Let's look at product friendly files. Blackmagic Raw. Let's see here. I don't see anything regarding the monitor, but so let's look at this. So yeah, so here's the flip up screen. So let's talk about the flip up screen. Uh, so as you can see, you can flip it up, flip it down. Again, I think that was a great addition. I kind of just wish you already added flip up, flip down. Maybe do something like what the S1H. I wonder if Trevor's in the chat. If you where you could flip it as well out, that would have been nice. Or at least flip it up, kind of like how a certain someone sort of hacked your previous monitors and sort of did, where they flipped it up. Now again, it was buggy because the image didn't really position correctly, but I thought that would have been a nice addition. Now I will say this, the monitor does look a lot smaller, which is great. So it's a lot more compact, which again, if it's more compact, that means hopefully it's about this. I'm thinking it looks about the same size as the C70. So this looks like it's going to be about the same size. We'll have to see when we get it in. But the 6K's Pro models, HDR's display features 15,000 nits of brightness. So great. So that's great for sunlight, but it doesn't say anything about if it actually has parameters for HDR content delivery. So I'll have to see about that. So we have the same operating system, color science, optical viewfinder. They had added the initial XLR for built-in XLR inputs, but it doesn't say anything about having 3 different sources, which is what I was hoping. So yeah, I know you guys are big on using SSDs. Again, I am strongly against doing this, simply because I've had too many bad experiences where I have lost connections and footages have been lost doing this. So I always just go with CFast. That's my personal recommendation, but that is at your own discretion. Built-in timecode generator. So yeah, so it's got the built-in same as before. But let's keep it going. I don't see it, but let's keep it going. All right. With RF, you can go PL. That is an also great point, Atrin. With the RF mounts, you have the option with PL, because Metabones does have a RF to PL adapter that you could adapt to this. So that would be a great thing. 4K DCI only. It would have been great. It would have been huge, but this is another time, I think. IR-ND filters. Yep, we talked about that. Yes, it's saying on the settings with little saying that it's only for ATEM Pro. So I'm going to look for that, and then I'll definitely do, when I do my update video, I will definitely I'll definitely drop that if I can get confirmation on that. I wish they use a better design team. Nice features, but cheap look to the body. Yeah, I mean, look, that's just, if you got to think about it, that's sort of how Blackmagic has always been. Blackmagic has always been very liberal with their design choices for their cameras, all the way back to the original cinema camera. So I've just grown to accept that that's just sort of the Blackmagic way. Look, deliver great looking images, but not the prettiest looking bodies. But it's about the use. Mateos, I have the 6K, and with B-roll, I can't use 4K, but with this new 6K Pro, will be possible with 4K DCI. Okay, I definitely got to check it out and see. If that's the case, then yeah, that's a pretty big deal. There are filters have been designed to filter both optical and IR wavelengths, evenly eliminating IR contamination of the image. All right, that's good to know, Morani. Thank you for passing that on. BH website is updated. Pre-orders are live. So yeah, if you want to, guys, go ahead and get your pre-orders. I'm not going to pre-order it. I'm just going to wait till it's released. Because I've always had my luck where I just wait. I typically get it. I typically get it the day it ships. So that's just have been my luck. Whereas pre-orders, it just takes forever. But hey, go after it, man. Only 2 audio tracks, which is again, that's what I expected. Bit disappointing. I love RF lenses for stills, but not my first choice for video because for me they are terrible focus breathing. Otherwise, optical quality is first rate. Great point. Great point, Eugene. Game changer. 2,500 is a fabulous price. No, fantastic price. Definitely a fantastic price. I'm okay with SSDs only if the cable is locked on both ends. Never had any problems touching wood. No, I'm not trying to say guys don't do it. It's just this is just my personal preference. This is definitely you guys. I've told this story plenty of times if you've been following me for a while. But I've had a wedding. I filmed a wedding with the Pocket Cinema camera 4K, and part of the reception of when I was recording to an SSD was gone. Even though I hit record and it was showing it was recording, the file wasn't there. And multiple people I've worked with alongside also have experienced this same thing where they recorded, they know they recorded, and then all of a sudden the shot was gone. So again, if you guys want to go that way, by all means, just be cautious doing that. Because honestly, I already pay I'm willing to pay for CF Express, and CF cards are not. It's not as expensive as CF Express. So for me, I would always rather pay the extra money for security. That's me personally. But if you guys don't want to go that route, definitely it's up to you guys. It's not my cup of tea. All right. There's also EF to PL adapters. Yes, that is true, Eugene. However, depending on the design of the EF, they may not work. And even certain PL lenses will not work with it. So yes, there are EF to PL adapters. There have been situations where the lens was either did not fit that adapter mount, or the adapter itself would not fit the design of the way the EVF mount was made. So again, it's kind of a wild west when it comes to EF to PL adapters. The first Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K was a pain in the ass to use. I remember I owned the original Pocket Cinema camera, and I honestly didn't think it was that bad. Yeah, it was kind of yes, going through the menus was annoying, but honestly, if you had your everything set up before, it was actually a nice little thing. It's just like it was like working on an old school phone. But that was just me. That's a little bit of nostalgia. Cheap look because they are really cheap for what they can deliver. So for the price design, it's nice enough. Yeah, I'm like, look, you go try finding a camera that's going to deliver the stuff that this camera is delivering at its price point. I'll just save you the trouble. There isn't any. I absolutely understand your point of view on SSDs. Yeah, and I totally get why other people do it. Because I understand. If you gotta do what you have to do within your budget. But I just security over saving money is always number one for me. But we understand each other, Adrian. I think of lost files already happened to me, but with UHS 2 SSDs. Oh, UH2 SD cards. Okay. Yeah. It could. I know. Yeah, that may be like compatibility issues. Again, with Blackmagic cameras, you gotta be mindful of the cards you use. You gotta make sure you look at their approved SD cards, because especially with SD cards, I've had issues where that has happened and I've lost footage. Because they have very specific. Usually, if I would tell anybody, if you're going to go SD cards with any Blackmagic product, whether it's the Video Assist, their HyperDecks, or their cameras, Sony Tough cards are always the best cards to go with. They seem to do the best performance. So I would always recommend Sony Tough cards if you're going to be recording to any Blackmagic product. All right. Looks like the chat is dying down, and I actually have to get going because I got some work with. I gotta meet up with a client, but this has been a great time with you guys. I'm definitely gonna follow up and read more about this. Thank you all so much for joining me on this stream. I love watching with you guys. So keep an eye out. I'm gonna do a recap of this. I'm gonna do a recap of this live stream. If not today, it should be out tomorrow. But we're definitely going to do a recap. I'm definitely going to like follow up on everything. So if you guys have questions that you want me to follow up on, please leave it in the live chat. Not in the chat. Leave it in the comment sections, and I will definitely look to see if I can make sure I get all the information you guys need. If you have any questions regarding this stream or Resolve or like the Blackmagic cameras, again, leave them comments below. But thank you guys for being with me. I really, again, appreciate it. This has been a wonderful chat with you guys. But until next time, take care, everyone.